Hello, everyone. We are back for another episode. And today I have with me Tandy Bowyer. She is with Wild Heart Yoga. She's also been a personal trainer for over 19 years, specializing in women's health and wellness and helping women stay strong and fit with aging. Loving all things yoga, anatomy, and kinesiology. That's going to be what we dive into today. So, Tandy, I'm super excited to have you here today. Thank you for taking the time out.
My pleasure. I'm just delighted to be able to chat with you.
I'm delighted to talk about all things related to yoga. So tell me, you've been a trainer for over 19 years. What got you into doing yoga specifically?
It's it's kind of hard to pinpoint because I became a personal trainer first, and I will be celebrating my 20-year anniversary as a personal trainer in June. So that's been something that I've been very passionate about. But I think somewhere along the line, I just wanted a nice counter to all the exercise I was doing for myself and for my clients. But I had gone back to college, and on the college campus, there was a YMCA, and I started scheduling my business classes around my yoga classes.
Mm.
And one day after yoga, this little gal came up to me and she said, "Are you a yoga teacher? You're so good." And I was like, that's the next thing I'm going to do. And so I started out on my journey to find my way to become a yoga teacher because at that point I had no idea. And I literally scheduled um, a course. It was a day-long course, and it was for continuing. It turns out it was continuing education for one of my fitness credentials. It was not a way to become a yoga teacher, even though it was a yoga class.
Mm.
So a lady there told me about Yoga Fit, which is an international yoga school. And then I contacted them, and that's where my journey really began with that. And I was just super excited. And I was drawn to this particular school because I could pay as I went. And I'm a very type A person, Virgo to the core. And to become a registered teacher, which a lot of people don't really know the distinction between yoga instructor and yoga teacher. Of course, I had to be a registered teacher, which I am. You have to have a minimum of 200 hours of yoga teacher training. And I've
Mm.
spent my entire career with Yoga Fit, spanning years and years and years. I'm currently what's called an ERYT 500, which means I'm an experienced registered yoga teacher with over 500 hours of teacher training. In my career, I've taught well over 10,000 hours of yoga. I have to put in there, I did own a yoga studio for 7 years. So a lot of that, I taught most of the classes. So that tallied up a part of that. But um, I took 300 hours of trauma sensitive yoga training so I could work with veterans. So I've been contracted with the Wounded Warrior Project. I was able to work in assistant living facilities with special populations. And a very interesting contract I had was with a local hospital teaching trauma sensitive yoga in their behavioral health unit, which was a lockdown. And I couldn't be in there by
Wow.
myself. So that I kind of would jokingly, because I'm kooky, would go, I hope they let me out when the class is over. But so it's been a wonderful journey. I had a lot of trauma in my life, and I can very clearly remember where I was. I was in Orlando in a yoga teacher training. And, you walk into a room with 50 strangers and, you take this training. It's usually a couple of days. And at the end of that training, after a very intense, like 2.5 hour master class, and this delightful teacher that was leading read this poem at the end. I almost always choke up when I tell this story, but read this poem. It was from Robert Hastings called The Station. And I encourage everybody that I tell this to maybe look that up. You can Google it and read that, but it's about life's journey. And in that moment, At 52 years of age, for the first time in my life, I fell in love with myself. And
Wow.
I share with people that story because yoga changes your life. And it may not be the very first time you ever roll out your yoga mat, and it may not be the 100th time, but at some point, when you have a consistent practice, it fundamentally changes everything about who you are, your body, your mind, your spirit, how you walk on this planet, how you treat other living beings. And it's a phenomenal journey. And that's part of the reason why I've been so passionate about it and just delighted to share my practice. And I'm not always super woo woo or super serious. I mean, I've taught classes where the name of the class was Happy Hour, and I used like Led Zeppelin and AC/DC music background, to teach the class, and
Right.
just making it really lighthearted and fun, and that kind of thing. But in all seriousness, it's an amazing thing to be able to do for ourselves, and in line with how much benefit we get from exercise. And there's a whole debate about how we've westernized yoga and all of that, and I can touch on that or not in this conversation, but it's not the same yoga that you'll find in India or in the Himalayan mountains or anything like
Yeah.
that. But it is a wonderful practice, and it does connect us to our body. And I feel like that's so important, because being disconnected is a weakens our immune system, and exercise is pretty much the cure all for everything, absolutely everything. And I might have overextended the answer to your question, but
Very good.
but it's just, you can tell how much I love it, and
Yeah.
and I really do, and I encourage everybody to maybe put aside whatever preconceived notion they might have of it. And I had that preconceived notion at one time in my life. I went to visit my mother on a holiday years ago, many, many years ago, and her then husband excused himself to go in the other room to practice yoga. And I thought, oh, what a weirdo, because I really didn't even know what it was, at
Yeah.
that time. So, you can just think whatever you want until you know better. And then when we know better, we have a more open mind to explore those avenues for us. So that's where and that has been an almost 20-year journey. So I became a registered teacher after 200 hours of teacher training in 2013. So in February 2013. So I've been a registered teacher. I maintain that because I'm very proud of that credential.
Yeah.
So when little gals wanted to come work in my yoga studio, I'd always ask them, "Are you a registered teacher?" And they're like, that's a waste of money or whatever. But what I hear as a business owner, because you wear many hats when do this
Yeah.
thing and you actually own a business, is that you're a liability for my business. And every time I ever, let my guard down and say, okay, well, we'll give it a try, I was disappointed every single time. So everybody can think whatever they want. And maybe if you're not utilizing what the Yoga Alliance offers for your membership, that's on the individual.
Right.
Does not diminish what Yoga Alliance provides for their
So,
members.
so let me ask you this. What is the importance of doing yoga?
The importance would, I'm going to come back to maybe the physical aspect of it for a moment. In the kinesiology, the movement of the human body. So there's, oh gosh, what, 106 bones and 600 some odd muscles in the human body. And if we're not using them at some point in our lifeline, would those kind of go away? And one of the things for me, as I've gotten more mature, if you will, is realizing how important these muscles are to help us in our older age. So people start getting a little bit older. If they're not taking care of themselves, they're a higher risk for falls. They're a higher risk
All right.
for dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all these things I have, and I'll make a side note on that for a minute, but just being in touch with your body, yes, if you look at it more from an exercise perspective, it's healthy. And there's a lot of isometrics. Isometrics still strengthen and lengthen and tone your muscles. Just that body awareness, it becomes more with your practice. We all roll that mat out that first time for whatever our reasons are. And it's usually something that has to do with exercise or fitness or looking more tone or building muscles or something like that. But it becomes a more personal journey the more you do it. But it really, for me, all ties into the personal training for the benefits of fitness. And I just read an article, and I'm sorry, I don't remember who wrote it, about Alzheimer's actually begins in our 30s. People think it's something that doesn't happen until you're in your 60s and 70s, but it's called a silent disease or a silent killer because it actually starts very early in life, but it's not diagnosed till much later because there's no symptoms until you're older. So the number one thing that we can do to prevent things that affect our brain is exercise. And so that includes dementia and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. So to stave off that, it may not be a cure-all, but I worked for a physical therapist for 4 years as a personal trainer in that facility. And I worked with patients who had those conditions. And one of the things that they love to do, Parkinson's particularly, is boxing. I'm a certified boxer. And boxing is a very quick way to get the heart rate up. And that helps increase the dopamine in the brain, which is diminished by the Parkinson's disease. So it's not a cure-all, but it enhances the quality of life for the patient. And it feels good to punch something. You put those boxing gloves on, you can get some stress off your chest.
Powerful.
Exactly. And I'm quite petite. So at 5'1", I feel very empowered when I put my boxing gloves on, so I like to punch things. But I have quite a few pairs of boxing gloves, and I do in-home personal training. And right now I'm working with a lady who is blind, and she loves to box. And so, we do that about once a week. So there's a lot of benefits to getting, she's got some problems. So it's very hard. It's a challenge for her to get her cardio. And so the boxing gets your heart rate up. Yeah. So there's just so many benefits, like just about the cure-all for anything. I might have already said this is exercise, and you can put yoga under that umbrella if you want, right? But for a lot of people, so depending on their mindset, maybe they'd be more apt to try yoga if you called it stretch and flex, instead of using the word yoga, So
we have a lot of ladies in the audience who do yoga. They love it. Right. They'll do it in addition to doing any kind of weight training and different things like that. I think I've never personally done yoga. I love the idea of it. I think for me, it's I just don't stop doing what I'm doing to go do something different. But I have had a very big interest. That was something this year that I told myself, I would really like to start taking this up. Now, for me personally, like you talk about it being a journey, I want it to be a deeper connection to myself.
Right. It can definitely do that for you.
So you mentioned trauma sensitive yoga. What is the difference between regular yoga and trauma sensitive yoga in the work that you do?
So trauma can be, we've all had some kind of trauma in our life. It doesn't have to necessarily be, oh, you were in a war and you have post-traumatic stress kind of trauma, which is a very valid type of trauma. But with the postures, the asanas in a yoga practice, some of them are very vulnerable. And so in a trauma sensitive yoga class, and most often that would be something the person coming into the class would know that they were walking into. And in a gym setting, they're not going to have a big sign that says trauma sensitive yoga. you
This
know,
way.
yeah, right. For the most part, but maybe someplace they do that, but I've yet to see that. But in a yoga studio with a different kind of, that's a whole different setting, and I offered that. So you would avoid postures that make you feel very vulnerable, that you would not probably think a second thing of in a regular, if you will, yoga class. So you're just going to um, be more alert of what might be a trigger for someone. And, I would probably have had a bit of a conversation with my class. If it's one on one, which I've done this, I have a very open conversation about what might be a trigger or what we might want to avoid, so that
Right.
I know, so that I don't lead my client or my participant or my student through something, and expect them to do something that doesn't feel right for them. And I say that I don't care what class I'm teaching, if it's in a gym, if it's a private or in a studio, I always say, don't do it if it doesn't feel right for you. There's always a modification for it. So the trauma sensitive, and I use sensitive rather than trauma informed. It's kind of a catchphrase that hit the coaching
Right.
industry, and everyone was calling, well, I healed my own trauma, so I'm trauma informed. And I'm like, no, you're not. You don't even know what
Right.
you're talking about. You can cause tremendous harm to someone if
Yeah.
you don't know what you're doing. So the postures are very key. Just being mindful of that. And a few things that I learned working with veterans is lights and sounds in where they're positioned in the building, like they don't like their back to the door,
The
the
door.
just little
Hmm.
things like this that make me more sensitive to what they're dealing with, and I don't have to know every detail, but just being a little more conscientious about some things that may make them feel uncomfortable in a setting like that. So it's everybody's different, and so every experience for me teaching is going to be different. And sometimes I teach classes that have 30 people in that. I can't possibly know every individual's thing,
Right.
even though they like to tell me. I just can't. I'll teach a class and then there'll be a line of 6 people waiting to talk to me after to ask me questions, and I'm like, okay, I'll do the best I can. But
Yeah.
which I love that they trust me like that.
Yeah.
So just like you would think, every day is different, every person is different. If we've had trauma, and that could be a broad spectrum of things, it could be from childhood, it could be from a car accident, it could be from sexual assault, it could be
Right.
from being in the war, or in the service, or anything that could cause anxiety, depression, insomnia, post-traumatic stress, any of those factors. When they practice the yoga, they feel better. So for whatever that is, the endorphins or the feel good serotonin, those good chemicals, or just feeling like their parasympathetic nervous system has calmed down because of breathing techniques that soothe the vagus nerve, and these kinds of things. So like knowing what the difference between parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, the fight and flight, rest and digest, and how what poses complement that or aggravate that. So just I think it's important that all teachers have some good grasp on doing that, because you never know when someone could be having a really bad day and
Yeah.
need to have that rest and digest, and those and coupled with postures that will help soothe their nervous system. So I think that's important for a teacher to be aware of. And she's not going to get that if she takes a 90-minute Zoom class and then prints out her own certificate, and then calls herself a yoga teacher, because
Yeah.
that's doing everyone a disservice.
I agree. And I love that you bring that up as far as the amount of work and effort that you put in, but also you've taken an extra step because I don't think I've ever heard anybody, even in my local area, who talks about trauma sensitive whenever it comes to yoga. And again, I've never done yoga. So certain poses might even trigger certain traumas that I have been through.
Right.
So, with that being said, that makes me wonder, yoga can also be a trauma release, would you
Yes.
say?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I will just put in right there in my school, Yoga Fit, there's a lovely lady, Shay Molendijk, who is military. She's a military spouse and in the military and a military family. She created a program called Yoga Fit for Warriors, and that's the 300-hour program that I took. And to be perfectly transparent, until I knew about Yoga Fit and all their offers to become a yoga teacher, I really didn't know about that until then either. But I saw the benefit of knowing that, knowing in 2014, I was invited to do a guest speaking engagement in front of a room full of medical professionals. One of my students was a head nurse at the hospital, and she was a very unassuming looking little lady who thought yoga was a yogurt shop. She came in looking for yogurt. She did not know she was coming to a yoga class, but
Oh,
became one of my favorite students, and she got me invited, and that began in 2014, my journey into learning to work with special populations in the hospital for the Wounded Warrior Project, for the assistant living facilities. So I have to give kudos to that lovely lady that began my traveling training journey. And I'm still doing that as of today. As of yesterday, I traveled to some ladies' homes, worked with them. I just worked at the gym this morning, but so every day my schedule is different. I don't have any kind of thing that looks like a regular job. It's like, I have to look at my calendar. Where am I today? What day is this? And where am I supposed to be? Kind of thing.
I like
So
that.
kudos to the Wounded Warrior, the Yoga Fit for Warriors, to Shay Molendijk, who became a fast friend of mine. I've known her. I started my journey pre-2020. So to go to get your 200 hours with Yoga Fit, I had to go to the airport, get on a plane, go to a conference, spend a weekend or a long weekend, take the courses I could fit into that. And we did that a lot. And in 2020, at some point, people started going online, as you know, for everything. And I was
Mhm.
like, I like to show up in person. I like to ask questions. I like to know if I'm doing things right in all of this. So I have relented and taken several online courses, but I did the bulk of my 500 hours to get that 500-hour point, all in person with these wonderful, amazing, educated, funny, charming, beautiful yoga teachers from all over the place, and that has expanded my bandwidth of of wisdom, if you will, in this industry. And it's not that I know everything, because I don't, but I know a lot. And if I don't know something, you ask me, I'm going to go find out what the hell it is.
Yeah.
So
I do the same
yeah,
thing. Look, I don't claim to
yeah,
know it all. Just ask
yeah.
and I will be happy to go look it up.
Absolutely. But for you, I think it'd be a great thing to just start with a gentle or beginner class. And beginner classes are not easy because you don't know anything, and for the
Yeah.
teacher, for me, that's the hardest class to teach, is the people that don't know what they're doing, because compared to a power class, and they're pretty experienced yogis, and they come in and I just have to cue one word, they know exactly where to go. And
Yeah.
whereas in a beginner class, I talk like I am now, just nonstop teaching them how to get to the pose and whatnot. But give it a try and give it a chance. So you're not going to like maybe fall in love that first time, and maybe you will. Who knows? But
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
No,
it'd be
I
good
have,
for
there's
you.
a desire there. There's been a desire for several years. I'm like, man, I'm going to go do this because, again, I want it to be something that I'm connecting to myself with. And I know
Yeah,
that doing a lot of the breath work and not only that, gaining some flexibility, like that's something I think we all need.
absolutely.
And then
Absolutely.
also just finding strength in different ways. I think that's another huge piece to it that I watch a lot of my clients and a lot of my friends go through who love yoga. That's what they do. And I'm like, I love that. I need to
Right.
make some time to go do that.
Right. For sure. For sure.
So what are
And then,
some signs? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. What were you going to
no, I
say?
was just going to say, and once you kind of get started, you don't really want to stop. And in my personal
Yeah.
life, I get up at 4:30 in the morning. The very first thing I do before I do anything else is I do about 15 minutes of yoga. And then again in the evening, I do about a 30-minute, very soothing, slow moving, calming yoga at the end of the day. And it changes everything about your life. It just is amazing. You sleep better in all of that at nighttime.
And that's interesting that you say that morning and evening. So that makes me question, are there different poses that can give you more of a wake up and
Yeah,
activate that sympathetic nervous system? And then there's poses that can
definitely.
activate the other.
Definitely. Definitely that. And coupled with breathing techniques. I mean, at the top of my head, could not even tell you how many different ways to breathe that there are. Some are very stimulating and invigorating, and some are very calming and soothing. So you couple your morning with a more invigorating practice. For me personally, getting up and just um, I digress. I have titanium in my spine, so for me, I just want to be able to um, do some range of motion and stretching, and get my spine moving and all happy, so that I can have the posture I need to start my day. And I don't feel right if I don't do that. And
Right.
then in the evening, it's just to kind of let the day go. Just the way you do your evening shower, you let all that whatever energy you've picked up along your day, just rinse it down the drain, let it go, release it, let it go with love, and then do this lovely little practice in the evening, and it's very soothing and calming to end your day and get into bed.
So that makes me curious when you're doing your classes, do your morning classes invite more energy into somebody's the rest of their day? And does your evening classes reflect, getting ready for bedtime?
It could definitely be something like that.
Okay.
Right now, I'm teaching for Health First. I don't know if you guys have Health First up there, but it's a medical facility and they have a gym. And I teach 5 yoga classes a week over there. And so quite a little variety. I have on Friday morning a power yoga, and in the description, I require that they have some yoga experience, and we go pretty
Okay.
strong. And it's challenging. But immediately after that, I have a beginner class. And like I said, it is not easy, but it's not what the power is, right?
Right.
But I
Right.
have to demonstrate both classes. So it's a lot for me. But I'm telling you, after you do 2 hours of yoga, you feel pretty damn good. Like, this is a great day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then on Saturday morning, I teach a different style of yoga called Yin, which is a mat based practice. And it's kind of based in ancient Chinese medicine, where it works with the meridians of the body, where
Okay.
different postures work with different organs for blood flow. So I would dare say you could almost call that a therapeutic style of yoga, as the meridians are how acupuncturists and acupressure people know where to put the needles or where to apply the pressure. The postures in that particular yin style also target the deep connective tissue, the ligaments and the tendons, and where the joints connect and things like this. And so there's a huge calling for that. And a lot of people who are yin people mostly don't even bother with the other classes, even though I think they could use them, and because there's no balance in yin, but it definitely serves its purpose. So there's lots of styles of yoga. People used to ask me for years, have you ever tried the hot yoga studio down the street? And I'm like, I live in Florida. I'm hot all the time. But I did. I went with a friend of mine, and I've known the owners of the local hot yoga studio for 20 years, and I loved it. I just absolutely, and it was challenging because I thought, oh, I'm so fit and bendy and I'm twisty and flexible. And it just about kicked my butt, let me tell you. So it's a 90-minute class in 105-degree temperature. 45 minutes you're standing doing postures, the other 45 minutes you're on your mat doing postures, and you leave there feeling like a whole different person, let me tell you. So it was quite the experience. The caveat for me, because of my schedule, is you have to get there early so you can acclimate to the heat. You're there, you're so sweaty when you're done, you need to change clothes or wrap in towels because you don't want to sit in your car all wet like that. So it's a good like 2+ hours out of your day, but the place is always packed. So there is a calling for
Ah,
it, so I have some favorite styles of yoga, but vinyasa is my favorite. It just means flow, and the postures flow from one to the other, and you can make it as challenging and difficult and fun, or as slow. And slow is very challenging too. So
interesting.
here's what I do though, is I just wait to see who shows up and I roll with it. Because if I have a game plan and I got my choreography, and I still write notes even after 20 years, I'm like, here's what I'm going to do today. And then I have, somebody come in that can't not do whatever I thought I was going to do. I just switch gears, because you just get to a point, okay, well, I don't have to even say it out loud. I just say it in my head, scratch that list and move on to the next thing. So,
Well, and I think that's important too, because there's so many, like even watching certain personal trainers, do group classes, they're not stopping to support one person who needs better form.
right,
Instead, it's oh, I've got 30 people, I just need to keep moving. That was never my thing. Even as a personal
right,
trainer myself, when I started my journey, it was always ensure proper form. My goal is for
right,
you to not get hurt, like at
right.
all. And I want you to do it in the right way. And I think having that integrity it's huge whenever it
It's
comes
tantamount.
to
Yeah,
and I think there's not a lot of coaches that have that.
right. I agree.
So
I agree with that.
what are some hello?
I know this is Samantha.
What are
This is her
some
thing now to come up when I'm on my computer. She'll
she
calm down
just
in a
wants to
second.
be
There she is.
known. Just wants
Yeah,
to be known. That's all.
she's a
Known and
beauty.
recognized. Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
I am
Okay. I got
curious.
you.
So, different types of, let's say, signs or symptoms. Why would somebody want to come to yoga if they're having certain, signs or symptoms of something in their body? Is yoga going to be kind of like you said with yin yoga and working through the organs and the systems and the functions? Is that going to be what kind of symptoms would they notice that would give them relief with yoga?
Well, let's start with something physical for an example first. Sciatica, which is a fairly common thing that people would have a lot of pain from. There are different yoga postures that can alleviate the pain of sciatica or piriformis. Those two are kind of real close together back there. So that would be kind of a simple example of something physical, but they might have emotional things that they're dealing with or stress that they're dealing with, which chronic stress can cause other issues. So I know I love you too, but you got to go. So your yoga practice can help alleviate a lot of that. It's not a cure all at all, but I feel like in today's world, and for some time, not just today, but for some time, um, oh boy, here I am with this. We have a broken healthcare system in this country.
Mhm.
And I know from my personal experience and what I had to deal with, and what even brought me to become a personal trainer. I had a health problem. And people are very quick to run to the doctor and get a prescription when they could probably alleviate their problem with exercise. And I was in this broken healthcare system from my personal experience. You get put on a prescription drug or a couple of them, then you have to go back every 3 months to renew your prescription. And oh, this prescription doesn't work, well, let's try this one. And I went through a lot for a period of time with all of that. And I just got to a point where I was like, here, go get my ink pen. Sorry. that I decided to take control of my own health. And that's when I really started diving pretty deep into it. And I'll share with you that a little over 20 years ago, after some emotional trauma, I gained a lot of weight. And as I mentioned, I'm only 5'1". And with that weight came type 2 diabetes. And I had just going about my life in quite a bit of denial about it for a little while. I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me in the mirror. And then one day I was at my doctor's office for a visit, and this was before they put everything on computer, and she walked out of the room and my chart was sitting there, and I kind of hopped off the table as much as you can when you're 100 pounds overweight and looked at my chart, and the words morbid obesity jumped out at me. I said, that must be someone else's chart. That can't be my chart, but it was my chart. And that really flipped a switch for me. And I decided right then and there that I needed to change. And I remember I had not been married terribly long. We had a townhome on Cocoa Beach, and I was sitting in my husband's ugly brown leather recliner one day. And I said, if I don't get up, walk out that door, nothing's going to change. And that's what I did. And I went down the street. There used to be a little gym called Curves. And so I joined, and I was going diligently, and I was doing pretty good. I had lost about 25, 30 pounds maybe. And I said, I can't wait to go see my doctor and just tell her, that I've been doing this. And she says, oh, that's just great. But not only can you do more, you need to do more. And Curves is for little old ladies. That equipment is all rubber bands, which was true. And she gave me the business card of her personal trainer. And I was so nervous to go meet him, but I did. And he was my guy. And I ended up logging in well over 500 hours of personal training with him, lost 100 pounds, reversed the type 2 diabetes with no medications, except my husband was kind of sick for about 2 years before he passed away. So the last 2 medications I was on was, whatever that horrible one was for sleep that they said would give you hallucinations and whatever.
Like
and
Xanax.
Then Ambien, CR, okay, which was terrible. And then some anti-anxiety medication. I don't remember the name of it right now. And that was in 2015. I decided I would wean myself off both those drugs with essential oils. And that's when I really got into holistic. I was already kind of, doing my yoga and doing my personal training, but I didn't want to. So the last visit to my doctor, and I was pretty fond of her up to this point. And I went in, and my numbers were good. My blood work was good. My weight was good, all these great things. And she went to write out my prescriptions. And I said, I don't need those anymore. And she looked at me. I said, yeah, I weaned myself off of them with essential oils. And she said this kind of jokingly, but she said, well, I still have 2 kids to put through college. And that was the last day I ever stepped in her office. So so I had already been on this path of trying to be healthier and not take prescription drugs if I didn't have to and didn't require it. And I'm not telling anybody, don't not take your prescription if you need it. But for me, I was over it. My husband's now been deceased for 2 years, and I'm like, I didn't want to take them. And what was the catalyst was I read that one of the side effects of Ambien, if you stop taking it suddenly, is death. So I'm like, oh, so they get you hooked on it because you're afraid you're never going to sleep again if you're not taking the medicine, but you could die if you stop. So
that's crazy. I took Ambien because I was having a lot of insomnia when I was younger, when my autoimmune started up. And I stopped it completely. There was no weaning off. I was just like, I'm done with this.
Well, and I probably would have been more like that. Then I read that one side effect. I said, well, wow. And then I was kind of new into my essential oils. I had my yoga studio, and I was, what better thing to couple with yoga than, all natural essential oils. So I just, it didn't take very long, a few weeks maybe, and I did it little bit by little bit. But I want to say in all that time now, it's been 11 years since I quit taking that, maybe once or twice for an ear infection, I've taken an antibiotic, but no other prescription drugs in over 10 years. So, and that's just a healthy lifestyle, a healthy mindset, staying focused on my, my exercise, not just me exercising with my clients, but my personal routine and doing all the things that look like a healthier life. Not, and I've never smoked and I don't drink and I've been vegan for 34 years. So
Wow.
I, have all of those little things that just help, you know, keep us strong and healthy. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
my cat won't leave me alone.
That's good. Look, Kat wants to be in the middle of everything. Welcome in.
Yeah,
We're down for it. So I
little
do have
stinker.
we're getting close to the end of the time, but I do want to ask
Okay.
this. Like, what are some simple things that women can start doing today to help them, like either poses or something related? What are some things for health and wellness that women can start doing to support their body feeling stronger, more mobile, and even just functional later on?
Okay. I believe the number one thing, and I have a little list for you, but the number one thing that I want anyone listening, including you, my beautiful friend, is when you look in the mirror, look into your eyes and say to yourself, I love you.
Mm.
Our bodies hear everything we say and think about us. And it doesn't matter if you're not in perfect shape or you're not where you want to be, or maybe you're not happy about this or that, but you're beautiful and you're unique and you're one of a kind. And we are all different, but we are all deserving of that love. And don't wait for someone else to love you. Not like mother love or parental love or, your spouse or your boyfriend or somebody, for it to come from somewhere else. Let it come from inside your heart. Because I can tell you from my experience in my own family with drug and alcohol addiction that this is a total lack of self-love, because when you love yourself, you don't treat yourself in that way. So that would be
Right.
my number one piece of advice for all of you, that you just love who you are and where you are and know that this is all a journey on this path, and that it starts with that. But another thing that I feel like that we don't pay that much attention to is getting enough water. We should be drinking probably about 2 liters of water a day. And that is not just to keep yourself hydrated, but for your brain health as well. I won't go into all of that, but you can dive a little deeper if you want to look at the benefits of staying hydrated. And then our fascia is something is so important. And our fascia needs to stay hydrated, but it does not stay hydrated through water. It stays hydrated through movement. So even if you don't know yoga, you can do gentle stretching. So when you get up in the morning after you're fasting throughout the night, and if you sleep in one position for several hours, your fascia shortens and tightens. So the very first thing when you wake up in the morning, just some gentle stretching, arms up, reach to the sky, exhale, connect to your breath, do some range of motion with your cervical, do some twisting, do a seated forward fold or a standing forward fold, do a squat, do some movement, get everything kind of back into place where it needs to be. And it only takes a couple of minutes. If you just spend 5 to 10 minutes in the morning to do that little routine, you're going to feel better and you're going to move more smoothly. And then for everybody, but for us gals particularly, we need resistance. We need to be lifting weights. You need to keep your bones strong. You need to keep your muscles strong to keep your bones strong. When you're lifting weights, you're getting the blood flow into your bone marrow, so that, heaven forbid, anybody getting into their later 60s, 70s, and beyond become a risk for falls because they have lost the muscle in their glutes, their hamstrings, and their quadriceps. your gastrocnemius and soleus muscles, your calves. Very important muscles to keep strong because those muscles in your calves bring that blood back up into the bottom of your heart. So strong body, strong mind, staying hydrated, and just loving the process. And be adventurous. Take a Zumba class, take a fitness class, take a yoga class, try different styles of yoga, lift some weights, go get a personal trainer and get a routine down. And, some people come to me and they buy a package, 10 sessions, and that's all they need. They just need an idea what to do for themselves. Or I have clients that stay with me literally for years, and I'm very blessed for them as well. I could probably stand there and do a dance routine for them while they're exercising. They already know it so well, but the accountability and all of that kind of stuff. So just loving yourself where you are, minding what you're doing, be mindful, cause no harm to yourself, and stay strong, because we don't know how long we have on this planet. My grandmother passed away in January. She was 104. And the one thing that she often said was, if I stop moving, everything freezes up. So we have to keep moving. You don't just arrive to a place of perfect fitness and think you don't have to ever do anything again. This is a journey of your lifetime. And you want to be as strong and independent for as long into your life as possible, because once you hit the doors of the assisted living facility, that's close to the last stop, so you just want to keep building muscles. And on that note, I don't know if this is audio or if you can see me. I know you can see me. I'm going to be 69 years old this summer. So I started this journey very late in life. I became a personal trainer at 48. I became a yoga teacher at 50. So you got to keep on rolling. Like most people I meet started doing this in their 20s, and I'm like, well, here you go. I went back to college in my 50s, and got a degree. So I don't know, maybe I'll live as long as my grandma. I don't know, but I'm going to be one badass, strong person in that assistant. I'm going to be the one teaching those people exercises.
I believe it. You're going to be like, come on, everybody, let's go.
You got to move.
I love that. And happy soon to be birthday.
Thank you. It's not till August, but I'm like, I don't know why I feel compelled. I need to tell everybody my age, but like most of the time people just don't believe it, and I'm like, it's true.
I didn't believe it when you first told me. I didn't believe it.
I don't really feel that different, as far as, my life view has changed as I've gotten older, and of course my body has changed. I'm still pretty strong and I'm in pretty good shape. But, and then there's mornings you just wake up and you're like, well, that can't be right, but, but at the end of the day, I wake up and I just open my eyes and I say, thank you, God, for another day. So I'm blessed and grateful that I get to be here, share what I know. And I don't know if you know anything about human design, but I'm a 1-3 generator. So I love to learn and I love to teach, and that's what I do. And it's what I do.
I love that. One more question before we go. So tell us where people can find you, and also let the audience know if you do anything online, or is it just in your location of Florida? Tell us where we can find you.
Well, if you are local to me, I am in Central Florida on the East Coast, 10 minutes from Cocoa Beach. I do have a little, my social media is probably the best way to find me because I got all kinds of links on there. So my Facebook page, Tandy Bowyer, TandyBowyer, little parentheses, medicine woman. I wanted to change that, but I'd have to change it on everything. So I just kind of left it.
Keep it
I do online private sessions. If you're local, I have come to your home or business or corporate to do individual sessions or work with groups. I've done that before. I work out of 2 gyms here, so that's an option for people that may have a gym membership. So there's quite a few options available to work with me. Just reach out. I'm on Instagram. I'm on all of them: LinkedIn, Instagram, all of them. You
Yeah.
can find me there, but probably Facebook is most convenient for people. And there I have a link to my calendar. You can schedule something with
Okay.
me. Certainly ask
Awesome.
me anything, and I can help you
Awesome.
figure out what's a good fit for you.
Awesome. Yeah, we're going to put all of those links below. So if you guys have any questions, you want to go check her out, you want to go get connected with her, or you want to do some sessions, that makes me curious. Like now you can teach me some yoga.
I would be delighted. It would be my honor to do that.
So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for just showing up in your authenticity and your integrity. I love every moment that I get with you. So
Oh,
thank you.
thank thank you. Thank you. It's been my pleasure. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. All right, guys, check all of her information and we'll catch you on the flip side.